be. We'll tell you of some troubles this land has chanced to see.
Our names are nothing extra, our tale is nothing new.
The story of our heroes, Immortal 32.
Mr. King! Mr. King! A letter from Colonel Travis.
To the people of Texas and all Americans in the world, fellow citizens and compatriots, I am besieged by 1,000 or more of the Mexicans under Santa Anna. I've sustained a continual bombardment and cannonade for 24 hours and have not lost a man. The enemy has demanded a surrender at discretion. Otherwise, the garrison are to be put to the sword if the fort is taken. I have answered the demands with a cannon shot. So our flag still waves proudly from the walls. I shall never surrender nor retreat. Then I call on you in the name of liberty, of patriotism, and everything dear to the American character to come to our aid with all dispatch. Victory or death. William Barret Travis. Travis needs me.
The day of our arrival, I know, was March the 1st. Through dark and dread they traveled, Santana's bloody thirst. They took up their positions to reinforce the men.
Through charge and charge they held them, until they charged again. And when the smoke had settled, with no more cannon roar, no man was left a breathing, climbed up at heaven's door.
And now you've heard my story. I've tried to tell it true. The story of those heroes, Immortal 32. We're the fallen rangers, Immortal 32.
Good morning, and a heartfelt welcome to each and every one of you as we convene for this very special commemorative event known as the Immortal 32 Arrive. Today, we stand united in remembrance of the valiant men from Gonzales who 188 years ago heeded the call of duty to bolster the Alamo's defenders at a critical juncture. We gather to celebrate their indomitable courage, their selfless act of sacrifice, and their profound dedication to the cause of Texas and its quest for independence. This morning, it's our privilege to welcome distinguished guests among us, including Mayor Steve Sucher of Gonzales, the very talented ensemble from the Gonzales Crystal Theater's Young Texians, who you just saw perform. Our gathering is further graced by the presence of descendants from those brave men who, in 1836, rallied to the Alamo's defense, embodying the timeless legacy of their ancestors' sacrifice. We also have among us this morning one of our esteemed board members, Hope Andrade, former Secretary of State for the state of Texas. Hope, where are you? I saw her. There she is. She's tiny but mighty. You see her in the back. We also have with us our Texas Land Commissioner, Dr. Dawn Buckingham. Dr. Buckingham is the first woman to hold the top position at the Texas General Land Office. Buckingham's deep roots in Texas and a dedication to service make her a true embodiment of the pioneer spirit that built our state. As commissioner, she brings valuable experience and a strong commitment to support Texans through disaster recovery, energy, education, veteran services, and community safety. Yes, the Texas General Land Office has a big job. We're honored to have her with us today and grateful for her incredible leadership and service to our great state and her love for the Alamo. Please join me in welcoming Texas Land Commissioner Dr. Dawn Buckingham.
Thank you, Kate, and the Alamo Trust does a great job, and we appreciate all you do. Let's give a big round of applause for all the projects happening here. And I just want to take an extra minute to recognize our amazing young actors, because this is why we're doing what we're doing at the Alamo, is to be sure that our history is told for future generations so that they can stand and be proud. And I was tearing up. The mom in me was like, oh, look at our precious young ones. So thank you all so very much for coming. You are amazing. And I'll be brief, but I'm just amazed to be here. I'm amazed to serve as your land commissioner. I love what I do every day. The single most important thing I am doing, though, because we fund education, we defend oil and gas, we take care of the coast, we do our veterans programs, we help people recover from disasters. But the single most important thing in this office is getting the Alamo right. And we are going to be sure that this building behind me is standing 500 years from now. And we are going to be sure, thank you. And we are going to also ensure that we teach our history to our children. And when I say our history, I mean our loud and proud, liberty-loving, line in the sand, liberty or death. So I'll just, thank you. So I just want to leave you with one thought. The Immortal 32 really defined what a Texan is. A Texan is someone who comes together, doesn't think about racial lines, doesn't think about religious lines, but they come together, they answer the call, and they give everything for their state, their family, their country, and their beliefs. So God bless y'all, God bless Texas, and thank you for allowing me to serve as your land commissioner.
Thank you, Dr. Buckingham. It's such an honor to work alongside you on this momentous project. As you can see, there's a lot going on here at the Alamo. We're very grateful for your attendance this morning, and you found your way here to these sacred grounds in spite of some of the construction going on. So welcome again. Our next speaker this morning is Thomas Ledesma. Thomas is a researcher for the Alamo. His passion for and knowledge of Texas history, coupled with his strong work ethic, has made him an integral part of the Alamo Trust team. He's a Rhode Island native, just like Albert Martin, the son of two veterans who came to Texas in his youth and has been a proud resident of this garden spot of the world ever since. Please welcome Thomas Ledesma.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers, for that very generous introduction. It is a highlight of my life and an honor to work here among a wonderful group of stewards that keep the memory of not only the Immortal 32, but all 300 years of history alive. And so I'm grateful to be included in this ceremony today. On February 24th, a dispatch was carried through the gates of the Alamo. That dispatch described the desperate situation faced by the garrison within this post. They were underfed, undersupplied, and undermanned. Though the situation was desperate, they remained determined to hold their position. There was something else that was contained inside that dispatch. As Albert Martin made his way to Gonzales, his saddlebags contained a great hope. A hope that clear and powerful words contained within would stir others to action. Arriving in town, Martin would have described the situation faced by the Alamo garrison. He had even quickly added his own plea for aid to the dispatch before it was taken further east. Hearing this call for aid, a group of men mustered. They were the Texans and Americans that Travis had called to in his letter. Altogether, approximately 32 would pick up their guns and set aside their fears. When they set their mounts to the west, they faced a dark uncertainty. Who were these gallant individuals? Some were leaving behind businesses, farms, practices, the schoolroom. All were leaving behind families. They ranged in age from seasoned adults to those still within the spring of youth. For instance, William P. King, who was 15 years old at the time and had to convince his father to let him take his place. They were a group very much like you all gathered here today. A diverse group whose sense of patriotism coursed through their veins like the waters along the Guadalupe. Determined by a sense of duty as deeply rooted as the mighty live oaks that dotted the landscape and rolling plain around their homes. On March 1st, in the pre-dawn hours, they would enter the walls of this besieged fortress. Not only did they bring much-needed reinforcement, but they also brought hope. A hope that others would rally to that call for aid. They had ridden into a desperate situation, and thus into immortality. I would now like to call upon those faithful men from Gonzales, the Immortal 32. It is now my pleasure to introduce Gonzales Mayor Steve Zucker. Please welcome the mayor.
Thank you, Thomas. Will my distinguished guest, Mr. Roberts, please start making his way to the podium? Gentlemen, please remove your cover. Please let's afford a moment of silence for the Immortal 32, the 9 Gonzalians that were here before them at the Alamo, and the remaining Alamo defenders. Thank you. I was elected mayor in June of 2022, and I was invited to speak last year at this ceremony, and I just want all of you to know that I only have one Immortal 32 speech in me, and I gave it last year. And so I've invited a distinguished guest and one of the City of Gonzales' new best friends to join us, and I'm ceding my time to him to speak to you today. There is one line from my speech last year that I would like to repeat, and I believe I directed it toward our good friends at the Alamo Trust. But pleased to know we Gonzalians are eternally riding your way. Thank you. Right. My distinguished guest is Mr. David Roberts from Montgomery, Texas.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the Alamo Trust leadership in recognizing the significant importance of Gonzales' contribution to Texas independence, and specifically the Immortal 32. And most of all, a sincere thank you to the Immortal 32 Descendants. I am very humbled and honored to be here today to honor you on this sacred ground. The contribution of the Immortal 32 and the residents of Gonzales to Texas' unique history and Texas independence simply cannot be overstated. Celebrated throughout the world to this day for the famous Come and Take It flag that represents the courageous act of defiance in the face of a tyrannical despot, with the first shots fired in the Texas Revolution, that small, iconic cannon has perhaps become the most famous cannon in the world. Gonzales resident George Kimball, who commanded the Gonzales Ranging Company, along with 4 others who participated in the original skirmish, the Come and Take It skirmish, formed a volunteer force that eventually numbered 32 that unselfishly rushed to answer the desperate pleas for reinforcements from Colonel Travis at the beleaguered Alamo. History tells us that the decision to hasten to the Alamo to aid Travis and the 150 men inside those walls was most assuredly made by those Immortal 32 Texans, having already known the fate of Fannin and the Goliad massacre. And they certainly knew of Travis's dispatch that the Mexican forces were already numbered over 1,500 Mexican troops with reinforcements arriving daily. So why would 32 men gallop to aid Colonel Travis and his 150 men sneak through enemy lines in the dead of night to get into the Alamo in the face of such overwhelming odds? And before we try to answer that daunting question, who were the Immortal 32? The oldest among them was only 44 years old. The youngest among them was 15 years old, who requested to fight in his father's stead. George Kimball was considered Sam Houston's best friend. And in fact, Kimball's muster number in the Texan Army was 0001, meaning making him the first recorded Texan in the member of the Texas Army. Kimball's Gonzales Ranging Company was the predecessor to the Texas Rangers. The Immortal 32 joined 9 others from Gonzales already inside the walls of the Alamo, making Gonzales' representation of 41 men who died at the Alamo the single most significant sacrifice of a single community in Texas. So back to the original question. Why would the Immortal 32 rush to the aid of the Alamo defenders while knowing no other reinforcements were coming and against overwhelming odds? Imagine for just a moment that you're in their shoes. They left their wives, they left their children, their families, their farms, their businesses, to rush to their fellow Texians' aid, certainly knowing overwhelming odds and that they would die. What would you do faced with the same circumstances? I will humbly claim that the very essence of what makes us Texans is embodied in the Immortal 32 and the rest of the Alamo defenders. God, liberty, freedom, volunteerism, sacrifice, integrity, duty, courage, honor, patriotism. We all know Texas and Texans are special. And yes, it's okay to admit that Texans are exceptional. Why not? The whole world knows it, and if they don't, we will remind them. We have a God-given right to be proud of our unique history and our heritage and to celebrate it because it does make us special. The Immortal 32 may not all have been born in Texas, but the spirit of Texas was born in them, just like it is in each and every one of you. Let us never, ever forget. Remember the Alamo. Remember Gonzales. God bless the Immortal 32. Victory or death. God bless Texas, and thank you very much. So please join me next to welcome our next speaker, Betsy Wagner. Betsy is a descendant of Johnny Kellogg, one of the Immortal 32 from Gonzales. Betsy will be reading her original poem on the Immortal 32. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
It's a beautiful day in Texas.
Amen.
This is in memory of the Immortal 32. I'll tell you of my brother's work. It was far from pretty. We came and fought, and yes, we lost, but we don't want your pity. Albert Martin brought the news. It riled us up to hear. So we gathered it riled us up to hear the desperate plea to come for help. So we gathered up our gear. We all met at Gonzales Square. We mustered one by one. We waited for the briefest time to see who else might come. Let's head on out, George Kimball said. We can't wait any longer. I let my mount to join the rest. Their hooves began to thunder. We traveled hard the first 2 days. We pushed to our fullest extent. The more ambitious riders were Flanders and Andrew Kent. On day 3, Squire Damon said to Floyd that caution now was needed. The idea grew with Kane and White. That notion was widely heeded. On day 4, we rode a wider path. John Garvin stalked for scouts. Tom Miller warned, they'll trap our camp. For that, we had no doubt. And finally, on the 29th, we waited in the woods. Jacob Darst reminded us to be as quiet as we could. Young Philip King was stealthy. He slipped up to the pen. He got the guard's attention and he said, "Hey, let us in." At last the gates were opened. We were crafty and so bold. We dodged those scouts from Mexico in the early morning cold. And there we found the Texas force, just as we expected, defiant, bold, and vigilant in the bastions they'd perfected. We saw their worried faces reflected in the lamps. They grabbed our gear and slapped our backs and welcomed us to camp. The sight of it appalled us. It was worse than his letter said. There were women with their children, and Bowie was sick in bed. It came to our attention within hours. It was clear that Texas was in danger of losing everything so dear. James George looked at Deirdre to give him inspiration. Concern shot through the group of us, and we questioned our migration. Isaac Baker went into action with Fishball on his left. They took a post atop the wall to give the others rest. By sunup, the shooting started. From distant guns it came. We didn't see those rifles yet, but they were deadly just the same. And from the town we heard the band. They played the Col de Guayo. The bugles sang their promise to send us all to their inferno. In spite of our resistance, many took a hit. The women dressed the bloody wounds from a meager doctor's kit. The cruel aggression wouldn't stop. The chaos was unrelenting. We thought we had discovered hell, but what good was our lamenting? They gradually encircled us with guns and knives and ladders. Their cannons broke the mission walls. Our defenses didn't matter. So we cloistered in the barracks. Someone bolted those big doors. We ran to the supply carts and waited behind the stores. My heart was pounding in my brain. I found it hard to breathe. My chest was tight, and I noticed a strange chatter in my teeth. Soon they blew those bolted doors and continued to pursue us. From room to room their masses came. Their blades were passing through us. And then I saw the Fuquay boy. His young face was shattered. His jaw was hit. He tried to speak. He spit his blood and blathered. John Davis tried to help his friend. A bullet stopped his kindness. Millsaps took one in the face, inflicting him with blindness. The time went by with screams and shouts and punishing confusion. The camp became a murder scene, Santana's retribution. I saw the bodies on the ground, Megan, Wright, and Jackson, as Lindley, Summers, and Cottle kept up their valiant action. George Tomlinson was going strong. I thought he might survive. But then, alas, a musket blew, and he fell by my side. The soldado grabbed me by the hair, and I had no more time. I shoved my knife between his ribs, and traded his life for mine. It went on that way for hours, men being sliced and shot, till one by one, we all were lost, but the Mexicans were not. The ground was like a butcher shop. The soldados built a fire. Their captain said to pick us up and throw us on the pyre. So that's the way it ended. For us, the war was over. Our time was short, our mission lost, the dread of every soldier. That was the end at the Alamo, but certainly not for Texas. Sam Houston led another band. Vengeance is infectious. Did we buy time for Texas? It darn sure wasn't free. The time we gave old Sam was bought by my brothers and by me. My name was Johnny Kellogg. There was no one left to tell it, except Almiron's dear wife, whose courage earned her merit. So if you knew old Jess McCoy, Espalier, or Cummins, or if you knew John Gaston or any of the others, You know that they were precious to their mothers, wives, and children. Remember us in Texas. We're looking down from heaven. And as our next speaker, I'm delighted to invite Daniel Garcia, who is a young resident of Gonzales, and he can speak to what it's like to grow up in a town with this legacy of bravery and sacrifice.
Good morning, everyone. First off, I would like to give thanks to God for this lovely day He has given us to remember and honor the sacrifice of those men who laid down their lives here on these hallowed grounds. A little context about myself. I was born and raised in Gonzales, Texas. I attended public school there and graduated as the GHS Senior Class President of 2022. I attended public school and I was heavily involved in my school activities and community, all in which we were taught to take pride in our work. I have since been pursuing an education at Texas State University and have had the pleasure of explaining where Gonzales is located to my classmates about 50 plus times or so. For being the birthplace of Texas freedom, it was surprising to me that not many people knew where Gonzales was. You would think if they have the come and take it flag hanging off of their truck, they would know where that flag came from. Well, it came from Gonzales, Texas. Growing up in a town as historically rich as Gonzales, at a young age you become numb to what's around you. You don't yet realize the significance of every city block that you're surrounded by. We have a whole weekend of celebration, but the only thing on your mind is getting those turkey legs and funnel cake out of your system so that you can get on the rides. It wasn't until my theater troupe, the Shakespeare Ninjas, also known as the Young Texians, were introduced to Fletcher Clark and his many ballads about the Texas Revolution when my appreciation for Texas history grew. My admiration for the Immortal 32 grew. They marched towards certain death. They marched on knowing their fate was sealed. In learning about their sacrifice, I realized a few very valuable lessons. To keep moving forward, despite the situations and the odds in front of me, and to fight for what I have, for what I want. They fought for their families, for their people. And what many individuals who are not well versed in the history of Texas like to believe is that the conflict of the Texas Revolution was driven by racial issues. But it would be naive of me or anyone else to say that those issues were not present before and after, but it was not the driving force for the Texas Revolution. The driving force was to retaliate against a tyrannical dictator of Mexico known as Santa Anna. This explains why Mexican culture is very prevalent in our state. This very mission still stands. A battle that was lost, considered a loss, but it's still here. And we celebrate and honor their sacrifice every year. And differences were put aside when it came to the people of Texas. It didn't matter what your skin color was, what your background was. We were fighting for our home. They fought for their home. And I think this is something that now more than ever we have to take into account. The world wants to divide us. It wants us to choose sides, to put labels on us. But one label we need is that we're Texans, we're Americans, and we stick together. We may never have to sacrifice our lives to ensure our families and people's futures, but we must act as if we need to ensure our unity to prevent our division. We need to protect our history. And if there is anyone who wants to strip us of that history, then they can come and take it. Thank you for your time. God bless Texas, and have a good day. Please join me in welcoming Annalise Weilbacher, a descendant of Andrew Kent, to the podium.
fifth great-granddaughter of Andrew Kent. For those of you who don't know who Andrew Kent was, he was an Alamo defender and one of the 32 men from Gonzales who answered the call of William Barret Travis. These 32 brave men are also known as the Immortal 32. The Immortal 32 exhibited bravery, honor, sacrifice, and the true spirit of Texas. These traits are evident in Andrew Kent's journey to the Alamo. In late February of 1836, a messenger showed up at the Kent home to round up men to go down to the Alamo. At this time, both Andrew Kent and his eldest son, David Kent, were both signed up as part of the Gonzales Ranger Company, but they both couldn't go down to the Alamo as that would leave Andrew's wife Elizabeth to fend for herself and their 9 younger children. After an honorable and heated argument between father and son, it was decided that Andrew Kent would go down to the Alamo and David would stay behind with his mother and 9 younger siblings. Later on in life, David shared that he believed his father Andrew knew what faced him at the Alamo and wanted to spare David his life. David would live to regret conceding to his father. As Andrew and his neighbors Isaac Millsaps and William E. Summers saddled up to leave for the Alamo, Andrew's 8-year-old daughter, my 4th great-grandmother, Marianne Kent, was outside. As the three went to ride off, Marianne overheard her father say, "This time you may see blood." Andrew Kent knew that he was riding off from his house for the very last time as he answered the call of William B. Travis. Andrew Kent and the rest of the Immortal 32 knew that they were going to be paying the ultimate sacrifice for Texas liberty as they left Gonzales for the Alamo. As a descendant of Andrew Kent, I grew up with the stories of this heroic act of bravery and many more. It is engraved in us from a young age what this sacrifice means and that it is our family legacy and familial duty to protect it. This includes joining lineage organizations who promote the preservation of Texas history, such as the DRT and SRT respectively, participating in ceremonies such as this, and sometimes correcting your 7th grade Texas history teacher. Yes, I actually did that. The same blood that ran through the veins of Andrew Kent is the same blood that has been passed down through the generations. It's daunting at times, but also an honor to be a part of this legacy. It's a sense of pride, but also a duty to preserve and protect it. It is important that we preserve and teach the history that took place in this very plaza for generations to come. The brave men who paid the ultimate sacrifice here did not do so in vain, and it is imperative that we keep their stories and memory alive as they are the true spirit of Texas. Thank you. Now, we will witness the arrival of the long-awaited help. The weary soldiers had no idea this would be the only brave group to answer the call for help. Gonzales men, march on and meet your compatriots.
Concludes today's ceremony. Of all the things we do during commemoration, this event always remains one of my favorites. It's just so beautiful. So a huge thank you to all the fine folks from Gonzales who are with us this morning. We appreciate your attendance. Mayor, Thank you. David, what a fine impassioned speech you gave to us this morning. Betsy, what a beautiful and moving poem. Thank you. Daniel, I think you have a future in politics here in Texas. Daniel for governor, right? Thank you all again. If you are a member of the Daughters of the Republic of Texas or the Sons of the Republic of Texas, would you please remain standing so that we may honor you for being here today as well? And you mentioned in your comments, it's important that we all continue that legacy for those of us who are eligible to join the DRT, who protected this fine site for more than 100 years. And I always am remiss in my remarks if I don't mention that the Alamo would not be here if it were not for the Daughters of the Republic of Texas. So thank you, ladies, for being with us this morning. So once we wrap up here, you're all welcome to come up and greet the Immortal 32, the wonderful living historians and descendants, and take photos with them. And then immediately following that, there'll be a brief program in Convento Courtyard where the monument to the Immortal 32 still stands to this day. Again, thank you so much for being here today, and please never forget to remember the Alamo.
Amen.